Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it, Thursdays here at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're well as you gear up for Nebraska-Purdue. A lot of high school action the next couple of nights as well. Big one between Millard West and Lincoln Southwest. Some playoff implications. There's a buzz around here in Lincoln anyway for that one that kicks off at 7. Locally, Will Wilson on that call over on KFOR. We are loaded up and want to hear from you as well. Numbers to get in at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at HailVarsity.com. Can also comment on the stream. StreamYard is up, and you can watch. That sounds creepy. StreamYard is up, and you can watch the show. ESPN Lincoln, Facebook and Twitter, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle. Follow the show. Be sure to like that and follow it at HVarsity Radio. My Twitter at Schmidt_radio. Elijah's Twitter at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. But big game, man. Big ball game in West Lafayette. As maybe you caught the cross, check that, the line change. And, hey, it is monstrous if you can show up and be loud and gold, right? That's what Purdue's going to try and do. We'll see if Nebraska can quiet the crowd. But a lot of implications for the West. And we can talk about different things. What will Nebraska do running the football? How can the defense disrupt Aidan O'Connell and this precision Purdue offense? And Jeff Brom's about as good as it gets. Calling plays, all of that. We'll hear from Mickey Joseph in a little bit. His final media session before the team takes off. That's on the docket. Brandon Vogel in about 20 minutes or so. He'll chime in with us this first hour. In hour 2, Gary Barnett will be with us. His take on Nebraska-Purdue and some insight on Matt Rule and just what's up for grabs in the West as well. In the Big Ten, a college football weekend look for Coach Barnett as well. And Jeremiah Sirles, our favorite Husker lineman. Sirles going to chime in with his keys to victory. And then Danny Burke, before he heads to Soldier Field, will give us some college football picks from VEASAN and the NFL pick tonight with the Bears and Washington. May God have mercy on your soul if you are going to sit and watch that. It's been a tough run of football. For every Chiefs contest you get, you've been forced to gut through a lot of Thursday night mayhem.
A lot of Broncos games is what you're trying to say.
Right. Locally,
Broncos-esque.
Locally, you get the donks on TV, and it's just tough to take. Right. You're supposed to be better with Russell. It's not the case. Nebraska's been much better with Mickey Joseph and Bill Bush. Does that carry over on the road? It did last weekend. You can't have the same type of performance. But I think the fear factor is something we need to talk about, right? The fear factor in the locker room and out on the field. And you've seen it through different staffs with Nebraska football. If the game goes sideways, if you face some adversity, if you run up against that proverbial brick wall, sometimes Nebraska's not been able to either climb over it or run through it. They get flattened by it, the old bug and windshield. And with Mickey Joseph and this team, I don't think we'll give our predictions tomorrow. I don't think they will win, but I'm not counting them out that they can win. And with Mickey, this team just doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of fear. They're not afraid. They're not afraid to go play. They're not afraid to go make mistakes. It's been tweaked enough because of that trust, and they believe they'll be in position to do the right thing. I mean, you got to execute. But for the most part, they've been put in position. They've been coached up. They've been coached hard. And they're, I think, going to go out there and just let the chips fall. And that's how Nebraska needs to approach this. They're underdogged for a reason because of all the transition. They're underdogged because of the injury situation. And they're underdogged because of what Purdue can do offensively and what they've done defensively, at least against the run. Purdue's an eyelash away from probably being top 15 and undefeated. Instead, they had to their get-right game was kind of a wow win at Minnesota. Does Nebraska have a wow win in them this season? You don't want it to, as you look back at the end of the season, say it was Rutgers. That was a wow that Rutgers wasn't up more points. That was a wow that Nebraska found a way. But can you have a wow win over a better opponent as you look towards the rest of the schedule? And you're still in this West race that's wide open. For Nebraska, they have made it a point to be 1-0 every week. Love that mentality. Go into Purdue with that mindset, but also go in loose. And I think that's the one thing, Elijah, that so far under Mickey Joseph, it's not that they haven't played with passion or intensity. They have. You can play with all of those things, but you can also go play loose. And Nebraska's not played like a loose football team for a long, long time. They have the ability to do that Saturday night and, quite honestly, the rest of the season.
And you mentioned the fact that Purdue is an eyelash away from being undefeated right now, being a top 15 football team. And you're 100% correct there. They lost by 4 against Penn State.
Had it.
They had it. They lost it late. Some offensive miscues really let Purdue back into that football game. Eyelash away. But also an eyelash away from being probably 2-4 right now. When you look at the fact that they only beat Florida Atlantic by 2. They only beat Maryland by 2.
The old double-edged sword, you're saying. But Maryland's pretty good unless they fade.
And I think it's a testament to Purdue, the fact that they were able to go pull out a game against Florida Atlantic when Aidan O'Connell was banged up. They were able to go pull out a tight game against Maryland. That's a testament to what this Purdue team is, but it's also a testament, and I guarantee Nebraska sees this watching film and sitting at home too, a testament to the fact this Purdue team is beatable. Now, am I sitting here thinking Nebraska is the team that is perfectly poised to go out and beat this Purdue team? No, but I think the Huskers are going to be sitting here this week of preparation, this week of practice, saying, you know what? This Purdue team is not a juggernaut. They're a beatable team in the West. They're probably not the team to beat in the West, which gives you confidence going into this. The fact that you're even with them right now in the Big Ten West standings, it's an elimination game. And from all the things I've seen from this Purdue team this season, yeah, they're a good football team. They've proven more to me this season than Nebraska's proven to me. I can't lie about that. But you can also sit back and go, you know what? Based on the type of athletes that we have here at Nebraska, now the development hasn't always been there, but based on the type of athletes that we have, we should have the capability to go out there and beat this Purdue football team. It comes down to going out there and executing and cleaning up some things that you need to clean up post-Rutgers game. I look at the offensive line. I look at the defense giving you 4 solid quarters, and they adjusted well after the first quarter, but they got punched in the mouth early. And I'm not sure that this is a Purdue team that you want to be playing from behind against. So there are things that you need to clean up. You need to go establish a running game, but you can sit there as a Husker and say, you know what? We can go get this Purdue team. This is not Ohio State that we're going and playing. This is not Penn State. This is not Michigan. It's Purdue. Purdue's a good football team this year. I'm not trying to discount that, but they're gettable.
Very much so. And it's a big game because it's the next game, but it's a big game because it can separate you in the West. It can separate you to that March for 6 or beyond, if you're a Nebraska fan. But it's also another game. So go in there, put your game plan together, and just let it fly, right? Play free. And I think Mickey can do that. The team's been able to respond. They've been able to respond at least the last 2 weeks with adversity, and they found a way. You're going to be stepping up your level of competition quite a bit because Purdue's defense, I don't know, it's probably on par with Rutgers, at least statistically it is against the run.
It's a different defense, but statistically on par, I can agree with.
It's somebody that it's not going to be an easy day against. Now you flip it around, and offensively, it's the best offense you'll see since OU, and that's what Whip talked about Now, when I'm judging football teams, my brother, Uncle Mark, always reminds me, and that tape has been burnt, thank you, Elijah, about how on the bandwagon for Oklahoma I was. Oh, man, they're a playoff team. Yes, they did. But things have changed, and Nebraska has stopped making everybody look like a playoff team since changes have been made. Oklahoma, dumpster fire. They're a nightmare right now. So, you know what? Nebraska, go play loose, go play worry-free, but be locked in and put a great game plan together with some of the tools you have. If you're Nebraska, there's plenty of warts. You got to dodge some potholes, but you can absolutely use some of the guys you have that can go win some matchups for you and go do it Saturday. And I'm excited to see where Nebraska's at with this momentum, how they handle it, and then how they go execute it in a big ball game.
And one of the biggest mentality differences is something that you just said, the fact that Nebraska has been playing free over the past 2 games. And the question in my eyes is, are they going to continue playing free when there's more on the line? Against Indiana and against Rutgers, there wasn't all that much on the line. What was there to lose? If you lost both of those football games, Husker Nation would have said, you know what, we were expecting it. We saw that game against Oklahoma. There was nothing for Nebraska to go lose those past 2 games.
Look what they've been through this season. You know, it's a wasted season. No, Mickey's not let it drift there. Even if they don't win Saturday night, it makes it a lot tougher to finish in a good area in the West and even get to bowl eligibility. Mm-hmm. But it's still not lost. That mentality, that mindset's at least been vocalized and accepted by this football team that there's still a lot to play for.
And the coaching staff has made it clear both in pressers and I assume with what they're saying behind the scenes. I'm assuming those two things match up, telling this team, you know what? The Big Ten West is still on the line. It's still up for grabs. We control our own destiny right now. And I think that the team knows that. So there is going to be added pressure when you combine that with the fact that there's a very important Big Ten West game going down earlier in the day, 11 a.m. between Minnesota and Illinois, I'm not expecting Huskers to be watching that game. You're focused on your game, but they got phones. They'll have the little score updates pop up on their phones to let them know what happened. You know Illinois is coming to town next week. And if, say, Illinois goes and wins that football game, you need to go beat Purdue to have a chance to control your own destiny after a game against Illinois. Is there going to be added pressure on this football team saying, you know what, we got Illinois coming to town next week. They just beat a good Minnesota football team, potentially, and saying, you know what, we need this game now. Because then, if you can go 2-0 these next 2 and Illinois beats Minnesota, you are in the driver's seat of the Big Ten West. You're not even controlling your own destiny. Now it's yours to lose. So there is going to be added pressure depending on what happens that 11 a.m. game and just depending on how the game goes Saturday night. And that's why I think it's very important for this Husker football team to play free because they haven't done that over the past couple of years. We can say that now in hindsight, that this team a lot of the time played to not lose a football game. They can't revert back to their old tendencies when there's pressure on the line against a team like Purdue. That's not the team you want to play to not lose against because Purdue, a veteran football team, 5th-year juniors, 6th-year seniors, a veteran football team. If you're playing to not lose, that team is going to take advantage of you playing either conservatively or playing tight. One of the two. That's the type of team that's going to do it, and that's going to set off warning bells if early in this game Nebraska's playing to not lose.
Nebraska's had too long a history of playing tight. Mm-hmm. They have played tight for the last 4 years, right? Except for the end of that 18 season. There's been too many moments where they haven't, air quote, let it rip. I think they can go let it rip Saturday night and just see where they're at. Other thing to look at, too, we know the importance of balance in the run game for Nebraska. And can Grant get some breathing room? Can the passing game open that up for this Nebraska offense? Purdue, and Tom Dienhart nailed it earlier in the week, it is a pressure game for Purdue. They've stubbed their toe. They stubbed their toe a couple of different times this season, but one loss isn't going to eliminate you from the West, but you can't have too many slip-ups. It may be a traffic jam for who comes out on top in the West, but games against Nebraska that you're favored by 13.5, you're supposed to win. You still have trips to Wisconsin to make if you're Purdue. Just going through the West here, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Saturday's critical. Let's not kid ourselves. But you look at Illinois, all right, they host Minnesota this weekend, then they're at Nebraska in 2 weeks. Both teams have a bye. They're at Sparty, they host Purdue, Michigan, and then Northwestern. Best case scenario, if you're Illinois, you're 5-1, right? You're 5-1. If you're Minnesota, you've already stubbed your toe against Illinois. Check that against Purdue. You're at Illinois, then you're at Penn State. You're at Wisconsin to end it. You're at Nebraska. You have Iowa. That'd be a hell of a good finish if Minnesota finishes 6-1. I don't see that happening. I don't have an optimal number to win the West, but best case scenario still includes a loss for everybody. With Wisconsin, they're at Sparty. We'll see where they are. They got to take on Purdue. That's at home. They're at Maryland. You know, Maryland, somebody subtly you don't want on your schedule this year. You're at Iowa, you're at Nebraska, you finish with Minnesota. That's a stretch for Wisconsin, absolutely. And then if you're Purdue, you're supposed to take care of Nebraska. Then you flip around immediately and go to Wisconsin. Tough ball game. Then you have Iowa. Then you're at Illinois. Northwestern, Indiana to finish, and who knows if Indiana's fighting for their coach's job, and it's a rivalry game, so all bets are off. Big opportunity for Nebraska. Can they cash in Saturday night? Brandon Vogel up with us next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
About 30 minutes away, we'll spend time with Gary Barnett. Coach will check in on the college football weekend. Jeremiah Sirles breaks down Purdue, Nebraska. We say hi to Brandon Vogel, managing editor from HailVarsity.com and magazine. And find him on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel. Dream Like a Champion, his book with John Cook. And the I-80 Preview podcast will have all the goodies on Nebraska-Purdue. Vogues, you're in game mode right now. I know your Bears play tonight. Big one Saturday night. How are you?
I'm doing well, and it does feel like a big one Saturday night. If you'd told me that after the Northwestern game, that Nebraska would be playing for first place in division going into their second bye week, probably wouldn't have believed you. But here we are, and it's pretty fun.
That's code for Vogues would have had me drug tested about, say, the Nebraska-Purdue game, man, it's could be a season definer. Is it fair to put that on this game and this team? I think Nebraska can continue to play loose. I mean, at least they've been able to play confident, so there's some semblance of not being out there and being afraid to make a misstep. I mean, they've found ways. They've responded to adversity. They've won against two teams that aren't great. Not their fault, just reality. Purdue's not great, but Purdue's good, and Purdue can. Man, they can make people look really bad under the lights at Ross-Ade. What are you labeling this game as? Is it just the next one, or is it a monster one?
Probably just the next one. I mean, it's this Nebraska season has already taken so many twists and turns that it's hard to treat it as we would if Nebraska were at a 4-2, the same as Purdue, and tied for first place. Like, how they've gotten there is very strange, and we all know that however it unfolds, like a big change / a fresh start is coming at the end of the year. But they've done enough through these past two games to say, well, wait a second, don't give up on this year yet, because there's still everything to play for here. And some of that's circumstantial with just how the West has unfolded, but I'll say this about Purdue. I think I was not on board the Purdue train in the offseason coming off a 9-win year, and I was wrong. I thought their defense had a lot of holes to fill and would take a step back, minus their defensive coordinator from last year, and they haven't. If anything, they've gotten better, and that's pretty impressive, and a ton of credit to Purdue. That said, there's still a bit of a curveball in the Big Ten. There are teams out there where you look at these games, and I think at least, I'm like, well, if Minnesota or if Wisconsin gets the sort of game they want, it doesn't match up that well with Nebraska. If Purdue gets the sort of game they want, it's not as far from, I think, the sort of game that Nebraska wants. So I think that adds a little bit of intrigue for Saturday.
Well, Vogel, let's dive into a Purdue preview from you just real quick, if you don't mind. And I want to ask you where you're wary of Purdue. Well, what position groups or what guys within this Purdue team do you say, man, if Nebraska can't game plan for this guy or this group of guys, it's going to be a long night for the Huskers?
Yeah, I think the big glowing and neon one for me is, well, you've got Aidan O'Connell, a sixth-year quarterback, and we know, he's going to make good decisions the vast majority of the time. Like, counting on him to mess something up is probably a losing proposition. But also, at wide receiver, they have Charlie Jones, the Iowa transfer, who's come in and been their go-to guy. But Purdue, and this has always been the case with them, like, if they feel they've got a mismatch or a guy who's hot at wide receiver, they'll go there repeatedly. And I think this is a big ask with Quentin Newsom's status for this game. Mickey Joseph said today that he'll travel, but it would be a game time decision as far as his availability. Like, it's a big, big ask, I think, for Nebraska's quarterbacks first and foremost, but also the safeties and the secondary as a whole. They've got to have a great tackling game. And I think that's the big one for me is if Nebraska's secondary is good to great, they've got a good shot on Saturday. If they're not, it could be sort of tough sledding.
Vogues, Purdue's been a little careless with the football here the last few games. 8 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. Probably way too many turnovers for Brahms' liking. So they've survived that. They survived it against Maryland, right? They survived in a little fortuitous setup in Twin Cities with Ibrahim out, and you still win that one 20-10. So the defense did the job. If you're Nebraska's front seven, can you go really win this thing for Nebraska, assuming the offense plays a little bit of complimentary football for you in special teams, does what they've been doing, and that's been fairly solid at least, or at least not detrimental? Can Garrett and the gang go harass this Purdue offensive line and make it a tough day or tough night for Aidan?
Yeah, I don't know if the front seven can win it on their own, because I do think a lot of the onus is on the secondary, but they can sure get Nebraska a lot closer. And I do think, Purdue lost, I think it's second right tackle in the previous game. And Jeff Brom was pretty clear about that, saying basically, like, we've got 6 guys that we feel good about right now, and the younger guys behind them may not be ready to go for a little while here. So they're a little bit short on the offensive line. I think gave up 5 sacks to Maryland. You can count on, interceptions happen all sorts of ways. And I was talking about O'Connell, and he's not going to put the ball in danger a lot himself. But this Purdue team has been fumble prone and a little bit unlucky on that front. Fumbled 8 times offensively so far, lost 6 of those. So that's kind of an added element that Nebraska hasn't seen a lot of. Nebraska's doing pretty well in terms of interceptions and getting hands on the football in terms of passes defended. That said, Purdue has 8 interceptions on the year, and it's still -1 on turnovers, which is a little bit surprising to see for that high of an interception number, but also a little bit surprising to, well, maybe not, but I mean, they're 4-2. So if that turnover number was way positive, you might be talking about a 1-loss team coming into this game against Nebraska. So that's a big piece of it. I do think they'll be able to put some pressure on O'Connell, and that can help a little bit. That said, Purdue's excellent at getting the ball out quick and using that horizontal passing game.
Vogel, let's flip this around and talk quickly about some of the health status of guys on the Nebraska team. We have Travis Vokalek, who left the game last week with an ankle injury. Sounds like that hasn't hampered him all that much this week, and I'm expecting to see him on Saturday. But then we also have Luke Reimer and Quentin Newsom, both guys that are day-to-day right now, expected to be game-time decisions on Saturday, according to Coach Joseph. What kind of impact do those guys have, whether or not they play on Saturday? How much are you factoring that into your preview of this game?
Yeah, I would expect Vokalek to be close enough to give it a go. And that's a big deal for Nebraska. He, when healthy, he has been a reliable option and kind of a third option, really. I mean, you look at Nebraska's passing game so far, and it's a whole lot of Palmer, a good amount of Washington, and then who's that third guy? And if Vogelek is good to go, then I think he becomes that third guy. So that's important. Reimer obviously tends to be in on most plays where he's out on the field, so can't understate his value there. You know, this Purdue team runs it fairly well on a Purdue scale. You know, this is a team that doesn't run the ball all that well traditionally under Brom. That said, this year's team's doing better, still not running it a ton. So that's where you'd worry about if Reimer was slowed a little bit, was maybe 85% or whatever. But the big one for me is Newsome, because if he's not able to go, then you're looking at throwing out Malcolm Hartzog, a true freshman, super talented, has a bright future ahead of him. Got picked on in the first half against Rutgers, and I think a lot of teams are going to do that because that's what you do with true freshmen. And then potentially Brandon Moore stepping in. You've got Braxton Clark as well. But Brandon Moore, who's a veteran, but, you know, has been in and out of the lineup so far for Nebraska. So of those three, I think the biggest one for me, at least, going in this Purdue game is definitely Newsome.
Vogues, a thought on Mark Whipple and his health. Is that a concern for you, not only Saturday, but moving forward?
I don't think it's a concern. I mean, you worry about him just, you know, personally, and he spoke about it pretty candidly for the most part, which I think we've come to expect from Mark Whipple. So, you know, Nebraska's offense, I look at this, and I came into the year kind of feeling like the breakdown of how this was going to work was, you know, we're going to use Whipple's passing concepts with Frost's rushing concepts. And whether that was accurate or not, I had reasons to think that was the case. Anthony Grant hasn't gotten any worse. Maybe the overall level of play has gotten a little bit better over these past 3 games, but Nebraska's ability to run the football is a glaring weakness at this point, and I don't put that on Grant. Like, I think he's doing what he can, and that might be one of the things that just slips through the cracks a little bit with, you know, Frost no longer here. We know Whipple's area of expertise, and it's that passing game. So this Purdue game, because we know the Boilermakers like to throw it 40-plus times a game, becomes kind of an interesting test of can Nebraska in this division win this way without getting much from the run game. And if they get sort of the first 3 games production from the run game, I think they'll be in a great spot. It's just hard to foresee that happening based on what we've seen so far.
Vokes, with Purdue's tendency to throw the football, that might be Nebraska's game plan on Saturday as well. Over under 3 hours and 45 minutes of game on Saturday night.
Yeah, probably got to go over. Indiana was another team that we knew wasn't rushing the ball all that efficiently, and you had a good. At the time that Nebraska played Indiana, I think Indiana was even leading the country in passing attempts. It's come down a little bit since then, but felt like that game took at least 17 hours to me. It was probably under that number, but yeah, I think we're going to be a safe bet on the over here.
Brandon Vogel with HailVarsity.com and Magazine Vogues. 10 seconds. The Boilermaker is a shot of whiskey and a beer. Seabass is still waiting for the check. What whiskey are you going with for your beer? With your beer, pairing with?
Well, walk in anywhere. I'm going to go Wild Turkey.
Okay.
If it's just like you can get it wherever you need it, it's always there.
Vogues says, give me the turkey. All right, we'll have one. Vogues, take care. Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks to Brandon Vogel joining us here on Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Open phones here till 5. Coach Barnett joins us a shade after 5, and Then Jeremiah Sirles. Numbers to get in, 466-377-6800, 825-5865. So do you look at this Purdue game as kind of the next game, or is it a make or break for this football team? And I don't want to go hyperbole for the sheer fact of putting too much on it, but to me it does seem, listen, you've followed Nebraska football for a while. You've been waiting for this team to get over the hump, and a road win is no small feat last Friday night on a short week. Beating Indiana, even though you're a favorite, no small feat. What's happened the last 2 weeks, you should appreciate, because it maybe just surprised you a little bit as a Nebraska fan. But you fast forward now to a Saturday night hostile environment, and you're dogged here by. The last time Nebraska's been underdogged this many points, you have to go back to 2005 against Colorado, right? And that was the restore the order. Let's get Corey Ross on a linebacker and slant route the Buffs to death, and Billy C. did. That was the dreaded let's throw every piece of plastic from the student section game where the refs launched the Buff student section. So that was a 17.5 point line. This is 13.5 right now. So it'd be kind of a, wow, Mickey, people nationally would stop and pause and go, wow, Mickey's got him playing some ball. It'd be an attention getter, right? And you've already got your team's attention, but it's an attention getter from the rest of the league, and it's attention getter for those nationally. And you'd clearly get more of that Mickey momentum, that swell of there's your guy right now wearing the headset.
And where I'm at right now with this football team is the fact that this game on Saturday is going to set the tone for what the rest of the season is going to look like. If you go out and win this football game, the rest of the season is now a battle to go win the Big Ten West crown. It's almost a game that's going to determine how high you're setting your sights for the rest of the season. If you lose this football game, you're at 3-4. It's a dogfight to go make a bowl game, and that's what's at stake here. Is this season about making a bowl game and salvaging the season, or is it about finally living up to your potential and going out and battling for a Big Ten West crown? If you beat Purdue, you are in the thick of things for the Big Ten West, and that should be your goal the rest of the season. Then it's not crazy for us to talk about. It still feels a little bit crazy for us to sit here and talk about Nebraska potentially being in play for a Big Ten West title.
They are. Technically.
They are, but it still sounds crazy because you look at who Nebraska has beaten. North Dakota, Indiana, and Rutgers. Those are three teams that coming into this season you were supposed to beat. Even Purdue is a team that you were supposed to beat coming into this season. You and I 2 weeks ago were talking about 1-11 with straight faces. We were.
And that's very fair. And to go, all right, you get a launching pad moment, you win at Purdue, you get over that hump, right? Really, you do. You go beat a good football team on the road, 2-touchdown underdog, and you really get out past that purgatory of 3-3. You're lucky as hell to be 3-3 right now.
You are, and that's what's crazy about this football game is it's not make or break for your season. You still have a chance to go out and go get a bowl appearance if you lose this football game on Saturday, but a
lot tougher.
Your chances to become Big Ten West champions are almost out the door if you go lose this football game based on what you still have on your schedule. It's not impossible, but your odds drop dramatically, and I think you have to set your sights on just getting to 6-6 if you lose this football game. That's what's at stake here. So I'm not crazy enough to think here this is like the most important game Nebraska's going to play this season, but it is going to determine how those final 5 games are going to go. That's what it determines.
And you don't win Saturday night, it's going to be hard to make a bowl game.
It's not impossible, but it's going to be difficult. That's where your sights have to be set, because then you only have room for error in 2 more football games. And if you lose to Purdue, Illinois and Minnesota both look scary, and Michigan just looks absolutely daunting. So there's 3 losses right there you can look at and go, well, is Nebraska going to get to 5-7 if they lose this football game? 6-6 is still in play, but I think 5-7 might be more likely, unless it's one of those games Nebraska loses in a walk-off field goal. Then I still feel fine about Nebraska's chances at making a bowl game. I still feel optimistic. But if you go out there and lose by 13, as Vegas says, then you look at those remaining games and you're struggling to find 3 more wins.
You are, and you have 3 big ones still coming to town. You have Illinois, could be a night game, could be a ranked Illinois team still ranked, but you turn into a spoiler trying to scratch and claw to a bowl game, or are you still playing with something that matters? Then Minnesota comes to town. You head to Michigan. You still got Wisconsin coming to town, and then you wrap up in Iowa City. And it goes, the terrain gets much, much steeper versus maybe flattening out. Still rocky because of who it is and what the strengths are, your opponents are. But no, if Nebraska gets this done Saturday night, and I'm not just talking a sweet old cover, I'm talking you go just get an outright win, then, okay, you've done some things. One, you probably got better offensive line play. You got better protection. Somehow, some way, scheme or just flat-out grit got you 100 rushing yards.
I was going to say, the key to me, if Nebraska wins this football game, not only do they need 100 rushing yards, they probably need a 100-yard rushing performance from Anthony Grant. Anthony Grant needs to go out and get 100 if Nebraska wants to win this game, or at least close. He can't have another game like Rutgers, which I'm not going to put it on him, but that's his final stat line. He can't have another game like that against Rutgers if Nebraska wants to go out and win on Saturday.
No, he needs to hit the century mark. Nebraska's got to be +2 in turnovers. Period.
I'll say +1. You definitely give yourself a great chance to win if you're +2.
No, you got to go. You got to go +2 on the road. The way Purdue's been handing out the football like it's candy, and you better at least get 3.5 sacks and about 4 or 5 tackles for loss. Keeping with what Maryland's done, keeping with what Minnesota did, be in that ballpark to be within a 1-score ball game. Numbers to get in at 466-3776. Can email. We'll get to some of those here in a little bit. Chris at HaleVarsity.com. Reminder about your friends at Red Zone Tickets. Selling fun since 2001. Do you have seats you want to buy or sell? We're talking Nebraska football, Husker volleyball, NFL action. How about Creighton basketball? Want to go see a concert and theater tickets, College World Series, all there for you with Red Zone Tickets. RedZoneTickets.com. They are local. They're an amazing group of folks just up the road in Omaha, and an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. They are local, and they are there for you with a 100% guarantee on all orders. You'll receive authentic tickets and experiences, and you'll never forget those moments, right? Cross off the bucket list and create the memories. Do so with your friends at Red Zone Tickets. RedZoneTickets.com, where you log on and get loaded up.
I'll say right now, if you need tickets to that Illinois game, if Nebraska wins on Saturday, they're only going up. The ticket prices are only going up. Go visit Red Zone Tickets now if you want to check out that Illinois game.
Dave Matthews.
That too.
Boom. We'll wind down hour 1. We'll take your calls coming up. Gary Barnett's 15 minutes away. Sirles. Next hour, it's Hale Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hale Varsity Radio.
Roadshow Friday. Tomorrow back at the Hale Varsity Club in La Vista. We invite you out 4 to 6. Maybe a special guest. It's going to be a fullback game. At least last Friday was. Joel Makovica, we are crossing our fingers. He might be on site with us. Lars Anderson going to join us. So excited for that tomorrow. Come see us at the Hale Varsity Club in La Vista, 4 to 6. Good stuff this hour with Brandon Vogel. Paul's on the line. Paul, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Dumb question because I didn't do my research. Tell me about this Purdue quarterback. How is his running ability?
Well, they ran him 3 times a year ago on some passing down situations, and Aidan O'Connell had a surprisingly good day on the ground. He's not a run first guy, a run first, second, or third guy, but they implemented some quarterback run, and it screwed up Nebraska's defense a year ago. But that's not typically what he does.
He's closer to Tom Brady than Lamar Jackson. You're not going to need to put a quarterback spy on him, and you also add in the fact that
but he's not a sloth. I mean, he hurt Nebraska running the ball last year.
But with how banged up he has been this season, dealing with some injuries, or rib injury especially, I don't think that's going to play much of a factor in this game.
I think that's what's given Nebraska the most fits in the last few years, are those very mobile quarterbacks that try to set up the pass, but we just can never get any pressure on. If he's not that great a runner, will we be able to get the pressure on him, do you think?
Well, I think that was the problem against Oklahoma, was the fact that Nebraska's pass rushers looked like they were trying to just box in Dylan Gabriel, keep him from beating you with the legs, make him beat you with the arm. And he did
tackling on the old 61-yard jaunt was no good either. Listen, you've got one of the top backs, Paul King Daru, is a game-time decision. One of their top linebackers is out. Elijah Canyon, their wide receiver, is out. And their starting right tackle, their second-string starting right tackle, is out. So Purdue's
so what you're saying is we got a chance.
I would say it's okay to take the points Saturday night.
I would say Nebraska's definitely the healthier team.
Yeah, well, kind of. I mean, Newsom and Reimer. That's not exactly awesome.
Yeah, but we got the mental health on them because we finally have the right mindset.
Yeah, that helps. I mean, it's all on Purdue to keep pace in the West. Nebraska's just kind of happy to be there. But stranger things, Paul. Thanks for the phone call, bud.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, O'Connell stung Nebraska a year ago scrambling. I mean, it was actually some quarterback designed run. You got to look that box score up.
Maybe what's the comp here if we're talking NFL quarterbacks? Maybe Aaron Rodgers. He'd rather stay in the pocket and deliver. He can definitely get outside the pocket and be mobile enough to avoid some rushes. But you're not, when you're going into this game as Nebraska, you're not game planning up like, hey, we need to make sure this guy doesn't beat us with his legs. I think if Aidan O'Connell beats you with his legs, it's better than the alternative.
Right. Yeah. How are they gonna get their numbers, right? That's the question here. But we'll see how it goes. I know Nebraska had 4 turnovers. Aidan O'Connell last year, 3 carries for -9 yards. Someone was smoking during it. They had some quarterback in there running it. Hovarth ran 11 times. Daru ran for 17. O'Connell scrambled. Nebraska did sack him 3 times, so that knocks down the old rushing total. In hour 2, Gary Barnett on the way. Jeremiah Sirles, Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. College football weekend, an incredible amount of games. We welcome in the Hall of Fame coach, Gary Barnett. And, Coach, we took the plunge on getting Junior his vehicle, and he said, you know what, Coach once had an Audi. I want an Audi, so we have spoiled the little guy.
Well, you sure have, man. And, of course, it had to be red. So
that's what they had on the lot, Coach.
Okay. Well, you were a lot kinder, gentler father than my father was. So, but that's okay. It's okay. It's good for you.
Well, it's all-wheel drive, right? You'll vouch for an Audi?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yep. Great cars. Great cars.
Well, it's red. Is there still a ban on red vehicles in Boulder or no?
No. They lifted that ban when Coach McCartney retired. So they had a major announcement. Everybody could buy red shirts and you could have a red car. So.
Well, red alert potentially for a lot of Big Ten West teams this weekend. I want to start off with Nebraska-Purdue, Coach, before we dive in. And what do you think of the job Mickey's done? It was ugly Friday night, but Nebraska's won 2 games in a row in league for the first time since 2018.
Yeah, it sort of looked like a rock fight rather than a football game. So anytime you win 2 games, it's hard to win any game. And so for Mick now to have won 2, that's a feather. And it was like you said, it wasn't pretty, but defense playing with 6 sacks, and 3 interceptions. That's going to win most games. And they're struggling running the football, which I just didn't think they would, but they certainly are. And penalties are killing them, but they found a way to win, and that's what it's about. So, and Rutgers is they're better. They're good defensively, and they made a heck of a game out of it. Had a chance, but just couldn't quite get it done.
Coach, what can you do to get your run game going? I know Whipple wants to run. They've got a really good back in Grant, and there's just not been development or the ceiling hit on the offensive line. They may reconfigure it a little bit, but I know it's always been a priority of you to run the football. Well, and everybody in the building knew that, and so that's the way you started. And when it always comes from the top, and it's whatever you get what you emphasize. Mm-hmm. And so Mark has always been pretty much of a even. Everything's pretty even, runs, passes, yardages, etc. And some people don't care what it is. They're going to do what they're going to do. And so it was a matter of emphasis, and everybody who put on our uniform knew we were going to run the ball. We were going to be physical. We did inside run, which is basically a 9-on-9 scrimmage for 10 minutes every Tuesday and Wednesday, full pad. So that's how we got better, and we took great pride in that drill, and everybody would gather around when we were going to do it, because they knew it made our defense more physical, and our offense either had to get physical or we weren't going to be successful. So, but that's what we emphasized. And you get what you emphasize, and today's football, you don't see so much of that. And but that's I guess I probably couldn't coach in today's football, but I could then. Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. So is it a matter potentially of just spending more time running physical drills? And I'm not at practice. I mean, I think Whip's a really good offensive coordinator, but can Nebraska be better running the ball if they spend more time at it in practice? Or do you think they are, and they're just deficient with the line? Well, it's probably a combination. It's never one thing. You just can't turn the switch and say, all right, we just did this one thing and it made the difference. It's a combination. And players have to feel it. They have to feel that it's important. And it's got to become important to them. And then it's a combination getting better up front. And you get better up front if you get more reps at it and it's emphasized. So it's like I said, it's never one easy switch that gets thrown to all of a sudden be better at running the football. Name this week out there is Matt Rule, let go from Carolina, and did wonderful work at Baylor, also at Temple. And there's been a little resistance. There's a lot of folks in the moment with Mickey, and he needs everyone's support. He's done a great job. It's also a national search, so Rule's a name that's probably on the radar. A thought from you on Rule. Do you think what he's done at his previous 2 stops in college, A, are you impressed by it? B, does it translate to the Big Ten? Well, yeah, it translates to the Big Ten, absolutely. Let me tell you, you know how hard it is to win at Temple? And then to walk into Baylor after they had that total meltdown, and people resigning, losing their jobs, presidents, that is a hard situation to walk into. And to do it, you better be a coach that has control and has a plan and works his plan. And so it appears, and I know Matt a little bit, but the jobs, to win 10 games 2 or 3 years in a row at Temple, good grief. Nobody's ever done that. And then to walk into Baylor. So yeah, whatever he's doing, it's not just an offense or a defense. It's coaching, and it's going to transfer whatever league he goes to. I guarantee you.
So if he wants to do it, now he's got 40 million reasons not to do it, and when you're in that situation, you get to pick where you want to go, and it's what it comes down to, really, Chris. It comes down to, do I want to go rebuild someplace again? Is that who I am, or am I tired of rebuilding? Do I want to walk in where I've got most things? And then I can just coach football. So, I think he's going to have to answer that, and nobody else can answer it for him. And so it's, and like I said, he doesn't have to make any decisions now. He can if he wants, but he doesn't have to. And I think Mickey's on a job interview, and as it should be, that Mike Sanford here is going to be on a job interview. The guy at Arizona State's on a job interview and doing well, and actually some of the interim guys have all done pretty well. So, we'll just see. And it never goes the way you think it's going to go. The guy might do a really good job, and everyone thinks he ought to get the job, and the AD's going, "No, I got to have a splash. I got to do this.
Sure.
I got to do that." So it could be anything.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, what impresses you about Rule? You laid out the on-field, but to me it seems like he's a pretty good connector. I mean, I was wowed with him going in and doing what he did recruiting-wise in Texas, being a Pennsylvania/New York City guy.
Yeah, well, you've got to be impressed with that. And, I haven't been in, I'm trying to think if I was ever in I don't think I've been in a situation where he was actually coaching, so I haven't visited those schools or anything. But it just doesn't happen unless you're able to recruit and people can connect with you. So he's obviously got that ability, and that's critical in today's world. He hasn't coached in college since NIL and the portals come around. So, but he's dealt with free agency. Actually, he hasn't dealt with it, but the people above him. And as a head coach, you don't deal with free agency in the NFL very much. Somebody else does all that for you. So he hasn't done NIL, and he hasn't done the portal. Interested to see how he takes that on. It's been interesting. I've wanted to watch and see how he's done at the NFL, because nobody from the college ranks who's gone on in the NFL has done very well. Very few. And usually they go from really high-profile jobs that are have inherent, benefits, and they're all from high programs like Notre Dame and Florida and Ohio State and those places. So they've always had advantages, but Matt didn't have any advantages. He went in there, and I was sort of hoping that he would make it in there just so to prove that college coaches could do that. But it appears to be, the same problem from everybody, whether you come from Baylor or you come from Ohio State. It's a situation where you don't have much control, and coaches want to be in control.
Did you ever think about the NFL? Did you have a chance?
I did. I did have two chances, and I think one of the things for me, and everybody is different, but I loved working with people 18 to 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And, I felt like I had something to offer, and I totally got a kick out of being with them and watching them grow into adults. And so that's what made me happy. I didn't need to be around the best players in the world. That wasn't anything I needed to do. I didn't need to operate at the highest level of athleticism. I was a teacher, and I wanted to be with people 18 to 22 and felt that's where my strength was. So I passed on both opportunities, and it never looked back, never thought a minute about going to it.
Who were the two places?
Well, I had a real good opportunity in Detroit, okay, and a good opportunity in San Diego. So it was just one of those things. Just wasn't for me, and that was fine. I was really happy with that.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, we'll hit some rapid fire. All right, it's going to be a maze out. Big ball game for Penn State. They've had a really good season, but kind of a statement opportunity. Michigan -7. What do you think about the action in the Big House?
I have not watched Michigan, and it's hard for me to really get a good feel for them. Penn State they were impressive coming back and beating Purdue in the opening game, I thought. These are so easily matched. Penn State's been running the ball very well. Michigan's got a great run defense, 67 yards a game. I'm going to go with Michigan on this thing, even though it's 7 points. I think they probably win by 7. That's about the right spread.
KU is going to have to do it without Jalen. OU's been reeling. -9, but OU's favored. Is KU in trouble? Is this a shake out of it moment for Oklahoma? It better be if you're talking to Sooner fans.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I don't think you just all of a sudden fix what's been happening to you overnight. And Kansas is as good a football team as most teams that are good in the country. They are solid, top to bottom. They're going to play with their backup quarterback, who had a great game last week against a really good football team that beat OU by 35 points. So, I'm taking KU in this game to not just cover, but I think they're going to win this game.
All right. Is it panic time in Tuscaloosa? This is a monster moment for Tennessee. They are dynamite. You've been on Tennessee from day one. Bama's still favored -7. What do you think?
Well, I'm taking Tennessee, and I'm taking them to win, but I'm sure taking the points. And in this game, this is a game Alabama doesn't really have to win.
Sure.
They really can get to the national championship by losing this game and beating Georgia, perhaps in the game, or beating Tennessee again, whoever that becomes. So, and with the quarterback out, I don't know if he's going to play, but it looks like he's not going to play. I just think Tennessee's got it going. They are rolling, and they are really good. And this game is at Tennessee, hard place to play. Going to Tennessee.
You sing Rocky Top at all or no?
Listen, I have nightmares. My family has nightmares of Rocky Top. We played them in the Citrus Bowl with Peyton Manning and 13 other draft choices, and we didn't have a draft choice. And it was we were down 21-0 before we even took our warm-ups off, and we tied it up. But we heard Rocky Top until it gives me nightmares.
Another shade of orange. How about Illinois ranked? And the Gophers off of a bye. Minnesota's favored here, -6.5.
This is a good game.
Great game.
Because Minnesota can run the ball, and Illinois is, I think, the best defense in the country. Minnesota lost their best player, but I think they win this game, even though it's at Illinois. I think they win. I mean, they're good, and they're solid, and they can run the football. So I'm going to go with Minnesota in this game.
Last thought, Gary Barnett with us. Coach, you taking the 14, or does Purdue cover? It's going to be a pretty crazy environment at West Lafayette under the lights. Nebraska trying for 3 in a row.
Yeah, Purdue's playing well. The 2 games they lost in the last minute of the game. And so they're playing pretty well. They're not overwhelming, but they're playing pretty well. And, they're really good on defense, especially against the run, but you guys are struggling running. So, you know what? I gotta tell you, Purdue's going to win this game. So.
Purdue it is. We'll give our predictions tomorrow. Gary Barnett. Coach, have yourself a weekend. Who are you guys hosting?
And we're hosting Cal at noon. So, we're trying to get it over with.
Jeez.
No, we have a whole new attitude there. Everybody's flying around to practice to see what happens.
Coach, enjoy. We'll talk again.
All right, Chris. Great being with you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. We welcome in our favorite Husker lineman and longtime NFL vet, Jeremiah Sirles, with us. You see on the graphic at Sirles71_HSKR. You in the Husker den, or is that just a living room?
This is the new office, since Mama Bear there decided that it was time to start setting up the nursery 7 months before the child is here. I got booted down to the basement. So we're now down here in the new Sirles lair, a.k.a. agent headquarters, whatever you want to call it. Still need a lock on the door, though, because the kids can still get in. So that's the negative.
Well, any Game of Thrones posters up?
Not yet. Soon.
Have you been watching House of the Dragon?
I have. I'm very pleased. I love House of the Dragon because Game of Thrones stays true to who they are. Mm-hmm. There's death. There's all kinds of craziness. The incest. There's some wild stuff that happens in that show, but they stay true to who they are. And I can't say the same things about Rings of Power. Enjoy Rings of Power.
I just got caught up on Rings of Power last night, and it's been like just a little bit underwhelming, considering how much more they spent on it than House of the Dragon. It's been underwhelming.
1,000% agree.
How about Dahmer? Have you been watching the Dahmer stuff?
Not yet. I feel like I need to be in a little bit worse place in my life to turn on the Dahmer series. I'm in a good spot, Smitty. I don't need to go down that hole.
Well, let's switch and talk offensive line play then.
Beautiful.
let's just go there. Sirles, what can happen Saturday night in Purdue for this offensive line? We've highlighted the yards per carry, and Grant's a good back. What can be done, either scheme or personnel-wise? I mean, do you expect a better result running the football?
We have to. If we want to win football games, we got to rush the ball for more than 75 yards. It's just to win games in the Big Ten, especially down the stretch, coming in October, coming in November when the weather turns a little worse, you can't rely to throw it all over the yard like that. You see even teams like Ohio State getting beat by Michigan last year in a snow game because Michigan ground and pounded. And if we want to win games, we have to control the clock too. This is a defense. Our defense isn't necessarily built to let a team go for 70. And, we have to be able to run the football. Now, how that happens, I have no idea. The one that I see is I keep seeing a bunch of guys rotating in there. You see Bando, you see Benhart, you see Piper, you see Henry Lutovsky, you see Hunter Anthony. We still don't know what the best five is. And that's a scary thing going into the midpoint of the season. By the midpoint of the season, you want to have your best five that have been out there, been through a lot of games, and been able to gel. We just haven't been able to do that. And I know the coaching change and everything, but Donovan Raiola has been there since the spring, since last year he got hired. I would hope to see that he saw those five, but also that just means that there isn't five guys that have taken the opportunity.
I was going to ask, are there five? Do you believe there are 5 to 6 down there that can be Big Ten good enough?
I mean, I have to think so. They haven't proven it to me. If I had my druthers and I could pick my starting lineup, I think right now it would most likely be Turner Corcoran at left tackle. I think Ethan Piper, Trent Hickson, and then I think Henry Lutovsky, and then you go Hunter Anthony. And the reason I go with the Lutovsky is because, Bando kind of is who he is. Brock Bando is what he has become. He's a serviceable backup Big Ten offensive lineman in my mind. The upside with Lutovsky is what I see for. You play a young player out there and you let him go out there. You're going to take your lumps with him, obviously. That's tough. But build for the future. Let's not pretend like we're going to go over here and go 6-0 at the end of the season here and make a run at this thing. We're still a growing football team. I think we can go 3-3. I think that's possible. But I think that you want to play the young players and develop them and give them a chance and take your lumps with them, but then know that next year they're going to come back even better.
Sirles, let's go learning lessons from the Rutgers game last week, as not much going on the ground, not much better in pass protection. So I assume there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And I guess what I want to ask you is, do you think that this offensive line, based on what you saw last week against Rutgers, can get enough fixed to at least give Anthony Grant a little bit of space? I think Anthony Grant's been making that offensive line look better than they are running the football all year long. And whenever he just gets a little bit of space, he can make some magic happen. So do you think the offensive line can improve enough from last week to at least give Anthony Grant just a little bit of space?
I hope so, but I'm not convinced. I think that Purdue's defense is much better than people assume, and I think that we as Husker fans have to start thinking about the Purdue of old. I think forever people are like, oh, we're playing Purdue. It's like, oh, well, they're a terrible football team. We're going to go beat them. Purdue's a very good football team this year, and they're actually really good on the defensive side of the football. So I don't necessarily know if it's as much as the offensive line opening the holes as much as throwing the ball well effectively early to get the loaded boxes away. I think they're going to load the box up initially to stop Grant and stop the running game and force us to throw it. But if we can get Trey Palmer, Marcus Washington, Travis Vogel, and those guys going with the short passing game and the down the field passing game, then I think some of the run game will open up for Grant.
Jeremiah Sirles with us, talking Nebraska-Purdue, Hail Varsity Radio at Sirles71 _HSKR is where you follow him on Twitter. So is that the game plan? Whips, controlled passing game. You dump it off, you dink and dunk. You find it to Vogel in the flat. You check down to Grant. You find some of those crossing routes. Is that how you'd go about putting this together? Does that make sense for Nebraska?
Yes. I think that's how you have to start this game. And as much as that pains me as an offensive lineman and the run the damn ball guy in me is screaming, that's the strength of this offense right now. The strength of this offense is the guys on the outside. It's the Trey Palmers, the Marcus Washingtons that have shown that they can show up in big-time moments and make big-time plays. We need a go-to touchdown. We throw it to Trey Palmer, and he's able to go and make things happen. I think that Grant has been able to be effective when he needs to be, but he hasn't had the opportunity to go take a game over like Trey Palmer has. And I think with the emergence of Travis Vogel coming back and being healthy is something that's going to be a weapon. You saw how well him and Casey Thompson clicked at the beginning of the year against Northwestern. He gets dinged. He misses some time, and he's still working himself back in. You saw that connection start to be rekindled last week against Rutgers. I think if you have a top 3 receiving threat of Marcus Washington, Trey Palmer, and Travis Vokalek, it puts a lot of stress on the back end of a defense.
How big a game is this? I mean, is this the next one, or is this kind of a statement opportunity?
I think this is another statement opportunity because I can't remember the last time Nebraska won 3 football games in a row. I really can't. And, that's terrible to say, but it's been since 2020 since we won 2 in a row. I'd say it probably has to go back to the 2017 season that we won 3 in a row. And, so that's something that we're going to have to figure out if we can learn how to win. I talk about it all the time. To be a champion, first you have to learn how to practice, then you have to learn how to win, then you have to learn how to handle winning, and then you can become a champion. And right now, I think that we're learning how to practice and learning how to win. Have we learned how to handle winning, which means have we done it to where we show up week in and week out and we take care of business during the week so that we can have those wins as we come in on Saturday? That's something this team has never had. This team in 5 years has never had winning streaks and understood what it means to win games and how each game becomes bigger and bigger after you win that last game. So I'll be really curious to see the energy level and the execution level that this team comes out with after 2 big wins.
Sirles, you mentioned the fact that your game plan to go in and get a win is to establish that short, quick passing game early. And I want you to put your offensive coordinator hat on here for just a second and tell me, how do you keep Casey Thompson protected in a short passing game? Because Nebraska's offensive line, they've been beaten on speed moves. They've been overpowered. They've struggled to pick up stunts from a defensive line. So with all those things combined, if you're the offensive coordinator for Nebraska, how are you keeping Casey Thompson safe in the passing game?
Yeah, I'm keeping him on rhythm throws. And what I mean by that is, 1st and 10 doesn't mean you have to go get the first down. 2nd and 6 is great. 2nd and 5 is better. I think that the ball can be out so quickly. And we watched Purdue do it to us last year. I watched Purdue dink and dunk us down the field with an offensive line that wasn't stellar. And it just frustrated our pass rushers. I can remember seeing visible frustration on Garrett Nelson's face and Caleb Tanner's face and those guys because they're rushing before they're even getting their 3rd foot in the ground. The ball is gone. So for me, I think that the big thing is keeping him in rhythm in the passing game and not trying to take too many shots down the field early. Get the slants, get the hooks, get over the RPOs going. Get those things that get the ball out of his hand quickly so that you can live in front of the sticks. If you go and you're trying to go deep passes on 1st down or 2nd down, and now you're living in 2nd and 8 or 3rd and 9 or whatever it is, that's where the recipe for disaster comes for this offensive line.
Do you have a team right now that you're looking at in the West that you'd put as a favorite? Is it Illinois? Is it Minnesota? Do you like Purdue?
I like Minnesota when Mo Ibrahim's healthy. I think when Mo Ibrahim's running the football for the Gophers, they're really, really good. Now, when Mo wasn't healthy, there was a big drop-off. I thought Trey Potts had a good year last year, but he didn't quite have the showing when he got the featured back role there. But I think the bye week, getting themselves healthy, their defense is somewhat suspect, but gosh, the way they play the football, they just hold on to the ball. They just take control of the possessions. And as long as they can keep executing and then Tanner Morgan doesn't throw interceptions, I think that they're the team to beat in the West right now.
What do you think of the job Mickey has done so far?
I think he's done a fantastic job. I think that whenever a new coach comes in, it's up to the players and it's up to the coach to really establish a new culture. And it's really hard because you don't fix a football team in the months of October and November. Football teams get fixed in January, February, March. And what he's been able to do, I think, is he's been able to take those players, and you can tell that Coach Joseph is coaching free. He doesn't have a ton of pressure on him right now. Yes, he's job interviewing and he wants this job, but there's no overbearing pressure that he has to go out and perform like Scott had on at the beginning of the season. I think there's an unspoken thing that players can feel that pressure. Players can feel that, man, if I don't go play well, man, I might get my head coach fired. And I think that you saw some of that anxious playing and maybe even some anxious play calling from Chenander and those guys of trying to maybe force the issue too much, where now you're seeing guys play free, you're seeing guys play fast, and you're seeing guys playing not afraid to make a mistake, but you're seeing them play fast and going to win. And that's what allowed us to win these last 2 games, in my opinion. I think that all comes down from how Coach Joseph is coaching and how he's embodying this team.
Sirles will wrap with this. Jeremiah Sirles with us, NFL weekend. Bills, Chiefs. Joshy and company go get the win, or maybe not yet?
Go Bills, baby. No, I think Joshy and company, when they are on, they're the best team in the NFL. I have yet to see a team in 2 years. Really, I can't remember the last time that you've had a team that's had their quarter in the regular season. And not just against slappies. Tennessee's a good football team. Pittsburgh's a good football team. And they're both, Josh Allen, everyone's just chilling on the sideline eating sunflower seeds in the fourth quarter, And with the injuries that they've had on defense, too, Jordan Poyer being out, Micah Hyde being out, they still don't have back their Tre'Davious White. I think that this offense is just so special. Now, on the flip side, Kansas City seems to have gotten it figured out, too. Travis Kelce, 4 touchdowns last week. Chris Jones with the pass interference or roughing the passer. That was just horrible. But, they've got a really solid front that they're going to try and challenge Josh. And, this is a team that if they can take the passing game away from Buffalo hasn't had much of a running game, where you've started to see Kansas City start to lean on the run game a little bit more, too.
Sirles, 15 seconds here. Do you think the Bills make a serious run at Christian McCaffrey? That was rumored earlier this week.
I think that they'd be dumb not to. I think that they need to do it because in one more year, Josh Allen's contract goes from his rookie to his extension. So that team's going to start to get picked and plucked apart because of how good they are. That's the way the NFL works. You got lightning in a bottle right now in Buffalo. I think that they might make a run at it.
Jeremiah Sirles with us as he breaks down some NFL and, of course, Nebraska at Sirles, 71_HSKR. Sirles, thanks for the time.
Absolutely, guys. Go Big Red.
There he is, Jeremiah Sirles. His thoughts on Nebraska-Purdue, how Nebraska can get it done Saturday. VSiN Sports Network's Daddy Burke. Burke's Best Bets on the way. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. Time for Best Bets with Daddy Burke from VSiN at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Catch him on the weekends with VSiN Sports Network and the Danny Burke Podcast. Pride of Chicago, how we doing?
I'm doing good, Schmitty. We got a beautiful game of football to look forward to tonight, so couldn't be more excited, my man.
Daddy Burke will be on location at Soldier Field for that throwdown between Washington and Chicago. We'll get your take on Thursday night football in a moment, but let's get into some college football. A couple of big Ten games. We'll get to Nebraska as well, but Illinois, Minnesota, man, who wants pole position for the West?
This is kind of absurd. Like, when I was typing out this game for one of our write-ups, Schmitty, I'm like, I never would have envisioned myself talking about a ranked Illinois team coming into this season. But here we are. College football has been wonky, to say the least. Minnesota, their start to the season really isn't too shocking. I think they were certainly the dark horse to come out on top of the West, if you want to call them that, coming into this year, because I didn't have any hope with Minnesota. And even though Nebraska was next in line, you kind of knew in the back of your head what Nebraska could be capable of on the bad side of things, and that has unfortunately come to fruition. But, look, I like Minnesota in this game, guys. I like them because I still have a lot of faith in this team. You're getting your star running back, Ibrahim, back in the mix. And Illinois, I think it's going to be kind of a snapback to reality for them. I mean, they really haven't played the stiffest of competitions coming into this game. And I think that's why Minnesota is really going to be the ultimate test for them. And I'm not saying that for Minnesota it's going to be a walk through the park. Like, no, Illinois has had a really good defense, limiting their opponents to just 8 points per game. But again, Petrus, Graham Mertz, Iowa, Wisconsin, what's the difference? There isn't any. They both didn't score over 10 points, and they both have crap offenses. So now you get a Minnesota offense that's averaging almost 39 points per game. Kind of an uncharacteristic performance when they took on Purdue, but now not only are they going to be ticked off coming after that game, they've had a week to prepare for this Illinois team, and it's not like in that Memorial Stadium it's a great home crowd environment, even though they're ranked. So I laid 6 with Minnesota. I'm not envisioning this to be a sweat-free bet. I think it's going to absolutely come down to the wire, but I do think the Gophers take care of business and put Illinois back in their place, and now we're going to be talking and shifting the conversation toward the Golden Gophers.
So you like Goldie, makes sense with their experience. How about Penn State? It's been a while since they've had a statement win. They get a chance at the Big House Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily expecting them to get the upset here, but this was kind of a bet just based on the number. It's at the key number of 7, and I just don't see why anyone would be rushing to lay that with Michigan. What has Michigan done to show you they can be relied upon right now? Yeah, they ended up beating Indiana 31-10, but it really took a while for them to open the floodgates in that game, and Indiana is really, really bad. And even at Iowa, it was a little bit too close for comfort. Maryland arguably should have won if you didn't have that fumble in the kickoff to start the game. So Penn State, obviously knowing they at least just need to keep this close. Again, when you look at realistic expectations, no, you're not going to win this game. But if they can keep it competitive, that's going to help them down the road in terms of bowl games and all those other things. But Penn State offensively has actually been better than I thought they would, averaging about 35 points per game. Clifford having one of his better years. And even though Auburn hasn't turned out to be anything, guys, the fact that they went there on the road and won 41-12, that tells me a lot about this Penn State team and what they were able to do against Purdue, even though it was a close game. So I'm not expecting the Nittany Lions to win, but I like them catching 7 here because Michigan's offense is seeming to be really one-dimensional right now. McCarthy has been taking a while to get after it, and yeah, Michigan's always going to have their solid defense, but they've clearly lost a step considering the players they lost last year. So I think getting 7 points with Penn State's a little too much, and I'll take that with the Nittany Lions.
Danny, before we get to some NFL, let's go to a game that's flown a little under the radar, and that's because it's going down out west. USC and Utah. USC might be the quietest college football playoff contender I've seen in a while. They've been playing really well this season, their first year under Lincoln Riley. As for Utah, they dropped one against Florida, and they've been perfect ever since then. Utah's a 3.5-point home favorite against USC. What do you like there?
Yeah, well, Utah, they're going to be ticked off themselves coming into this game after losing at UCLA and kind of a couple of uncharacteristic turnovers on the side of Utah offensively with Rising. So I think they'll be ready to kind of light it up in this game because this is going to be the first test for USC's defense. Now, yeah, they've been a fun team to watch. They've gotten off to a nice 6-0 start, and the offense is averaging 40 per game as well as Utah's. But, again, that's expected when you bring in a guy like Lincoln Riley and you bring in a great quarterback like Caleb Williams. So that doesn't shock me. But, again, their defense has faced Stanford, Fresno State, Oregon State, Arizona State, Washington State. No duh that their stats look good and that their defense is feeling great about themselves because they haven't faced anybody worth a damn on the offensive side of the ball. Now Utah, a team that will need to get this win to keep their aspirations in the postseason alive, they will be ready to go prime time at home at night. This is going to be a wake-up call for USC's defense. I'd lay 3 with Utah. If it's at 3 in the hook, I'm not really a fan of it, to be honest. I wouldn't go over 3 with Utah. Maybe at that point wait for an in-game situation. But I do think this is a great bounce-back spot for the Utes. And USC, as fun as they have been up to this point, again, their defense will get exposed in this game.
You taking the points or laying the points? 13.5 Nebraska-Purdue.
Man, I've seen this hit 14, and at 14, how do you not take it with Nebraska? I'm sorry. I get that Aidan O'Connell and Purdue are capable of being an air raid offense, but just because they throw the ball a lot doesn't mean they've been doing it successfully. But maybe they can against this Nebraska secondary. I get why the sentiment is completely gone toward the side of Purdue, especially on the road. I'm fully not expecting Nebraska to win this game, guys. They should. Right? Based on if you asked us how this game was going to go with the before the season, our expectations were a lot higher. But you've seen the defense be a mess. You've seen the offense have good possessions here and there. if you think Nebraska can put together consistently solid offensive possessions and it's not 3-and-outs and taking sacks, then they will absolutely cover 14, and the back door for sure is wide open. I just don't know if I want to have to sweat out Nebraska catching 14. Again, they should be capable of, I mean, if they can't keep up with Purdue in 14 points, what the hell are we doing at this point in the season? But I think for my mental health, I got to stay away from this spread, guys.
Danny, 60 seconds here, Thursday Night Football, Bears and Commanders. It's a pick 'em.
Look, the Bears have a finite amount of spots where they could win games. I thought that going into the season, and I think that now. It was an iffy game, but I've never had hope in Carson Wentz after his surgery or his injury, and clearly his head coach Ron Rivera doesn't either. He said their issues revolve around the quarterback. Like, yeah, what'd you expect when you bring in Carson Wentz? The Bears showed improvement in the second half with Minnesota. If Getsy's smart enough to let Fields throw the ball right out of the gate, the Bears will win this game. Carson Wentz will have a crucial turnover, and Chicago will get another dub under their belt. So I took Bears at the pick-em price, and I also took Montgomery over 14.5 receiving yards, minus 110. Fields has been loving to utilize him. He got like 60 receiving yards last game. Keep it simple, throw the ball, and you can throw those short screens and dump off to Montgomery, and I think that's a recipe to a Bears win.
Danny Burke with us from VEASAN. Danny, have a good weekend. Thanks for the time.
You got it, gentlemen. You too.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Thursday reminder, Hail Varsity Club is where we are at tomorrow 4 to 6. Come see us if you're in La Vista between Cabela's and Embassy Suites just off of the interstate. 4 to 6 roadie Friday, getting you ready for Purdue and Nebraska Saturday. So burgers, beers, wings. Elijah and I took down the pretzel and some fried green beans and some onion petals last Friday for the Nebraska-Rutgers game. Had some Hail Ale, which was absolutely tremendous.
And I keep coming, that was the Bang Bang sauce?
Yes.
Oh, phenomenal.
So the Bang Bang sauce was all sorts of taste. I mean, it exploded, man. It was spicy, but it was also kind of ranchy.
I'd describe it like a spicy ranch, but it's got another certain zing in there as well that I couldn't put my finger on.
It was wonderful. So get the monster pretzel. You'll thank us later. And do your thing Saturday for Nebraska-Purdue, and pop on over before high school action as well. Brady Altmans will be with us tomorrow as he'll be in West Lafayette. Lars Anderson, get his take on Nebraska and, of course, Bama, Tennessee. And we are anticipating a fullback sighting. Nebraska needs to take one with him to West Lafayette, but one of the best fullbacks ever, Joel Makovica, hoping to catch up with him. Got a 50-50. Maybe is the word. And then Bill Dolman, Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the professor. Connor Clark is going to be in Purdue. So we may check in with Connor as well. You're stuck back here.
I'm stuck back here, but it's okay. I might be biased, but that sounds like a hell of a radio show. So, like, I can't be that mad. I mean, whenever I get to wake up and take my dog on a walk and then show up for work and come in here and produce a hell of a radio show, I can't be upset.
Hey, fun show today. Big thanks to Sirles. Great insight. Barnett was money, as always. Brandon Vogel's fantastic. And then Danny Burke with the VEASAN Sports Network. So, reminder to get buckled up, hands on the wheel, eyes in mind, straight ahead. The driver has one job. That's just to drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. We invite you to check the podcast out. We always appreciate the interaction during the live show, 4 to 6, phones, emails, and, of course, StreamYard. But podcast, a great way to catch us as well, and that is Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio, and for sure, check out the YouTube channel where the show is streamed and then video is posted. And check out all your favorite Hurrdat shows. Just a wonderful lineup of action. And Brandon Vogel's I-80 preview, a must listen to as you get ready. Dare we do steak and a beer tonight for Washington, Chicago.
Thursday night football. We might as well.
No, we can.
We might as well.
I think I've got a 1-game win streak against you.
Okay. Well, I'll take the Commanders to win tonight.
Okay.
Believe it or not, if you want to go with the Bears, that's Danny's advice. Danny's advice: take the Bears, and I'll go against him. I'll take the Commanders if you want the Bears.
Do I get a point? It's -1 Washington.
Okay, I'll give you a point. Okay,
fine, it's good.
It's a point.
Bang.
Do it.
I will take Chicago, and I'll get me a whopping point. I will wake up tomorrow and see if I owe you a steak and a beer or not.
Works for me.
All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for participating. And we'll see you at the Hale Varsity Club tomorrow at 4 with Hale Varsity.